You're listening to the Life of Lozo podcast.
We are live here at Life of Lozo.
He is the funniest, smartest, sexiest guy I
know. Lozo is now live.
Yo, on this episode, I flip the script and talk leadership. Chris and I host Hacking Your Leadership Live on Be Live and Facebook and take questions in real time from listeners as we discuss leadership topics and concepts. Thank you to our sponsors, Stay Tuned Studios, Taylor Shop Inc., 03 Productions, HL's Photos, The Beat Brigade, Ron Designs Clothing, Ron's World Guitars, The Music Experience, Custom Shirts, and more, The Art of Kyle Willis, and of course, Jack's Nutrition. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to Hacking Your Leadership Live, episode number 2. I'm Lorenzo, and that guy is Chris. I don't know what side you're on, but Chris is on as well. Welcome to the show, everybody. Yeah, thank you guys for popping in. We are going live again for the second episode, and we are excited to talk about some leadership topics tonight, as well as answer some questions from any of you that may be watching tonight, listening, and or commenting. And of course, we appreciate your time and effort. So let me ask, before we even get started in the questions here, how was the feedback, Chris? Anything from people that watched the show last time that you heard back from?
Just a bunch of people who were upset that they missed it. So if we have a learning to take away, it would be do a better job of promoting it in advance. But you know as well as I do that we intentionally didn't promote it in advance because we were aware that it may suck, and we wanted to make sure that our viewers are just people who happen to stumble upon it. And so we had quite a few, but we intentionally didn't do that promotion first. And this time we think it went really well. And the feedback we got from people who did view it said that they really enjoyed it and they enjoyed the back and forth, even though very few people took the plunge at getting on camera with us. And so we decided it was time to do some promotion about it. So we've been promoting it for about 36 hours. If this one goes as well as the last time, then maybe we'll start this on a regular Friday evening.
Yep, you got it, man. Absolutely. And then right off the bat, we got my boy Wally's on. What's up, Wally? We've got Vic on. We've got Danielle, Vic's fiance, as I pop that up there. What's up, y'all? Thanks for popping into the show. Already got some watchers on. And excited to talk about some leadership stuff here. But yeah, I would agree, man. I got a lot of the same feedback, a lot of excitement. A lot of people reached out to me and said, "Man, I didn't know you guys were going live. I would have popped in. I got questions to ask and things like that." So I know this time around we gave it it was about a full day's notice on what we were doing. Did a bunch of social media posts, put some stuff up on LinkedIn. So we wanted to get a little bit ahead of it, and it seems like Friday night will kind of work. I don't know. I'm still on the fence about it. I'm thinking maybe potentially Sunday night. What do you think about Friday nights?
Friday night works for us dads who don't have lives anymore, But
right, exactly. Yeah, put the kids to bed and then hop in the studio and start podcasting and live streaming. Exactly. Awesome. Well, I guess let's hop right into it. As I've said, you can click a link that we have here on the live show. If you click the link and you're on iOS device or you're in Google Chrome, you can make your camera live. You can hop in. You can ask questions. We'd be more than happy to pop you on the show and see what you have to say. Otherwise, we will be more than happy to answer any comments that are in the threads, any questions that are in the threads, and we will go for probably about an hour till 9:30. So we will kick it off right here. So first question coming from Danielle/Vic. So Vic asks, is good leadership more like a good coach or a good parent?
Is Vic the same Victor who made the Instagram comment about being upset that he missed the last one? Is that the same Vic?
Same Vic, yeah.
Perfect. I'm glad he was able to make it this time.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts on this, man? Good leadership, good coach or good parent?
Well, my gut reaction is that there's a bit of both in it. I don't think I think as leadership has evolved, it has moved from really more like a coach and less like a parent to being more like a mix of both. And it seems to still be moving in that direction. So, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, it may be much less like a coach and much more like a parent. But as it currently sits, I think it's kind of both, because there's still the elements that still remain that come from, say, the coaching world as opposed to the parenting world are in that, you still have to hold people accountable, and you have to be able to cut ties with people if they're not willing to put in the effort at some point. Mm-hmm. So the parenting side of it says you give people the benefit of the doubt, you assume positive intent, you care about them genuinely as opposed to just what they can do for you. You meet them where they are. You understand that all of your employees are different, so you have to treat them differently. Those are all elements of parenting that have kind of seeped their way into leadership over the last generation or two. But as of right now, no matter what I do, I know my parents, will never cut ties with me. And I don't know if that's dumb on their part, but I've never given them a reason to want to. But, I have young children right now. My kids are 4 and 6, and I can't imagine them doing anything that would literally make me decide I want nothing to do with you ever again. Mm-hmm. There's just something about that bond that parents have with their children that says that you just don't ever get there, hopefully. And that if that exists as a leader, you're gonna hurt yourself bad. There are people you will have to cut ties with, and you need to be able to do it much quicker than a parent would have to, obviously. So I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, no, I was going to agree. I think that there are certain things when I think about leadership and I think about, people and employees and whatnot, like I think there's a lot of elements that I appreciated from my parents and from good parents when it comes to, listening with an element of love and understanding and listening because you're looking for the best solution, the best answer, the best advice to give. And you're really, really invested heavily in that person. Sure. I think that piece of parenting is critical, especially, this day and age, the workforce and with a lot of employees coming out of high school, out of college, some of them going directly into working, there is that piece of a leader's role that is expected of you to actually do something to, to show that you care about them and to help guide them appropriately. So I think that is, a true thing, at Disney, right? He says at Disney, I believed it was best to lead from the heart. Right. And we've talked before about the concept of head, heart, and hands and what that means, when he says, and manage with the brain. Right.
Right.
There's a lot of theory there. I think, though, as well, in the question itself, when you talk about, is it, parent or coach? And I think that we've settled on that. That's a mixture of both. I think the beauty of coaches is that their intent is to have you be the best version of yourself at the task at hand. Mm-hmm. And they get a chance to see and observe actually the work that you're doing and the thing that you're doing without sometimes that filter of, like the parent goggles, which is like, my kid is the best. They're amazing. I can't believe that. Like they just need this or somebody else's fault or whatever. What do
you mean? I don't have goggles on. My kids actually are the best. No.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So I think coaches have a great perspective and a way to be, honest with the people that they're coaching and the kids that they're coaching, and being able to tell them and hold them accountable to the actions that they see without any of that parent filter in there. So, so I think as well that for me, it really is kind of it might be 50-50 or maybe 60 coach, 40 parents. That's kind of where I'm at with it when it comes to really, really good leadership.
It's interesting that if I just kind of looking deeper into it, I think parents of previous generations were more like coaches. I think even parenting has gone more towards what parenting is today than what it used to be. I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago where the podcast host was talking about how he was upset that he got home from work and his kids were sitting on the couch eating pudding with a finger with just like their underwear on watching TV, and they didn't even say anything to him when he got home. And he says he remembers that when he heard that his dad pull into the driveway with a car, it was run for the hills, stop whatever you were doing, hide everything, make sure that you don't make him mad, that kind of thing. Yeah. And that's, might be a little bit of a caricature of what it was, but there's no doubt that there is a difference between the parents of 1 or 2 generations ago and the parents of today for how the relationship is with their children. So, I think if Victor had asked that question, 30 years ago, no one would have seen much difference between a parent and a coach. They would have been a much more closely aligned than they are today.
Yeah, and he says like walking in and seeing your staff slacking off. Exactly. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it used to be that you walk in and you see your staff slacking off, and they get upset and embarrassed that they got caught, but they quickly get back to work. There are organizations now where you walk in and you see your staff slacking off, and they get upset that you interrupted them from their slacking off.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
yeah.
the pendulum is moving.
Yeah. So let me ask you. So my thought is 60% coach, 40% parent. What's your percentage here?
I would say 40% coach, 60% parent.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If the average age of the people you employ is under 50, if your direct reports, the average age are under 50, maybe even under 40, definitely 60-40 towards the parent. If you are in a unique situation, maybe you're the CEO of a company and all your direct reports are in that C-suite are also over 50, then maybe it's more coach than parent.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, we have another question, but first a couple shout outs. What's going on? Oh, of course, you're welcome, Vic and Danielle. It's our pleasure. Thank you for asking the question.
Always.
We'll be here for the next 40 minutes or so, 50 minutes or so, answering more of them. So shout out to Hector. Thanks for popping on the show, Hector. We've got Roy Montero from Net Friending is also on, watching the show right now as well. And let's see, the next question comes from Walter Joseph. And he says, let's see here. Two-part question. Number one, who in today's society do you consider the epitome of a leader? That's the first question. The second question he asks, because it's two-parter, like as it should be, what characters from literature have you modeled your leadership after? So we'll start with the first one. Who in today's society do you consider the epitome of a leader?
Well, first of all, what's up with this guy who thinks he gets to ask two questions?
Right, exactly.
No. That's a tough one on who I consider to be the epitome of a good leader, because anybody who I could name that is known or that their name is recognizable to a lot of people, the persona of them that I see is whatever they decide to be their public persona. It's not how they actually lead. So I don't know if they're putting on a show. There have been plenty of people that we've seen throughout history where you know one side of them based on what their public face is, and then you start hearing backstories about how they were with their direct reports, and it's like, whoa, that's a very different person. And sometimes it's the good person is out front and it's the bad person behind the scenes. And every once in a while, though not as often, it's the other way around. You get somebody who seems very gruff and harsh to the public, and when they get one-on-one with their direct reports, their direct reports always seem to love them. And so I don't know that there's a person that I could say that I really love their leadership style, because the only people that I can speak to the leadership style are people who have actually been my leaders.
Sure.
So I kind of think about that first.
Yeah. Well, I think that I agree with you that that there is kind of the public persona, and it's hard to so I'll give you an example, right? I was asked about Gary Vaynerchuk, right? And like, I'm a fan, you're a fan, watch a lot of his content and appreciate a lot of his messaging. And they were like, on a scale of 1 to 10, do you feel that he's approachable? And I was like, well, based on the public persona, I would say a 10. I've never met him. You have, right?
Yeah.
You've had conversations with him, right? Exactly. So like there's been interactions there, but as far as like actually spending time with him away from that element,
right.
I can only speak on his public persona. I would say though, over time and what I've seen and the amount of times I've seen him take the time, be approachable, have conversations, I would be led to believe that he is very approachable and he's very genuine at his approach to how he talks to people.
Sure. No, I would agree with that. Actually seeing him in person. And I know that the times that I've had conversations with him in person have been structured. It's an event and I go and I have, 1 to 4 minutes chatting and then it's on to the next person. So that's the context of what I had. And obviously that's set up to be that way. So I can't really use that to judge it. But I have had times where I've noticed him outside of those events
Right.
where maybe he's leaving the event and he's walking down the street to go get into his car, and somebody will pass him on the street and say hi, and he'll stop and talk to that person. And there are no cameras rolling, there besides his internal one, which they can cut that out if they don't want to show it. If they don't want to show him being a jerk, they just won't use it. But I don't. I think he's really close to what his public persona is when he's in private, because he's shown what it is like to kind of put your life on camera. Yeah, it'd be really hard for someone in his spot who is public so much to have a switch that just gets flipped. I mean, you have to believe what you're saying at that point. It's on some level. I don't see him being different to his direct reports than we see him.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, to answer Wally's question, there are people in society that I see that I like this about them. I like that about them. Yeah. I like their approach to this. I like how they said that. And it's kind of bits and pieces. But I think to really answer that question, as far as like the epitome of a leader, I would have to name somebody that is not necessarily a public figure. But to your point, Chris, like somebody that I have been led by, to say like that's what I model myself after. Sure. And that's what I take and implement into my own leadership to the people that I lead. So cool. Second part question. So what characters from literature have you modeled your leadership after? You want me to take this one first?
Yeah.
Deadpool. Easily. Simple.
I know when you say that, you're saying it a little tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
And I laughed immediately too when you said it. But there is something that he does, that the character does, and that he doesn't try to be different things to different people.
Right.
He's the same person no matter who he's talking to. When he doesn't have when he's talking to what's his name, TJ Miller in the bar. Yep, or when he's talking with his woman, like when he doesn't have the mask on, he's the exact same person. And I think it's a good metaphor for that, because there are the good leaders that I know of, they do that. They aren't a different person when they go home than who they are when they're at work. And I think that he's one of the rare characters, movie characters or superhero characters that you could say that about. Almost all the other ones, the whole concept behind the story is that they are a human, they're different, and then when they put on the mask, they become somebody different. That's the whole point. And he is not that at all. He doesn't try to hide it. He doesn't try to let people know who he is. He says his name.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the mask is to protect people from having to stare at his face.
Right. Exactly. No, that's fun. Of course, we would be able to unpack and talk about the actual leadership skills from Deadpool and who he is as a leader. What about actual literature? Books that you've read? Anything top of mind for you when you think about that, and then you think about that question?
See, the hard part is that I read almost exclusively nonfiction. I love books about economics. I love biographies. I love feeling like I'm learning something that way. I've always had a really difficult time reading fiction. I feel like
well, he just says literature, so it doesn't have to be fiction or nonfiction, right? So it could be a historic figure or a leader or something like that.
Yeah, no, I'm lost on it, honestly. I don't know. I don't have a person that jumps out to me as saying that I modeled my leadership after them. I've typically modeled my leadership after the good leaders that I've met, and the bad leaders that I've met too have helped me model what not to do. So I got just as much value out of reporting to people who were not great leaders because it showed me what I didn't want to do and how I didn't want to treat my people. I
would agree. I like the essence of the question, but I would agree that I can't think of a single character from literature, whether fiction or nonfiction, that I would say that I've modeled my leadership after. Right. Honestly, it's like I just take bits and pieces from everywhere. If there's something that I've read that I really like, that I've enjoyed, or whether it is fiction or nonfiction, or a story, or like anything at all, where I can think about it and go, that's interesting. That helps shape an idea or a thought or a direction in which I want to influence people or talk to people or lead people. I kind of take from it all. So I would agree. I don't have an answer to that question, but it's a good question. So let's see here. Next question. Let's see here. Frank Weaver. What's up, Frank and Janelle? Big fans of the show. And a lot of comments on LinkedIn. I know, right? I constantly supporting us on LinkedIn and sharing out podcasts and things like that. So Frank wants to know, it says, first of all, thank you for the live Q&A. How do you influence people in your organization to volunteer more?
I can take that. I mean, fortunately, we're live, so we can ask Frank for clarification if he means volunteer more, meaning to take on more responsibility within the job, or to volunteer more, meaning to. Are we talking about social leadership here? We're talking about volunteering outside of the company.
I think social leadership outside of the company. That's what I think the context is.
Oh, I mean, lead by example. Like if you're a good leader and you are leading your people well, then you going out and doing it, they'll want to do it with you. And it might not be the first time or the second time or the fifth time, but if you keep doing it and you show that you're doing it not because you're trying to get something out of it, but that's because that's just in your DNA and that you want to give back. That becomes infectious, that other people will want to gravitate towards that. Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I was going to answer the same exact way. I think, we talked a little bit about this in the social leadership podcast episode, where it really is about role modeling and leading by example. I think it's one thing to maybe convince people, or like you can set up, you can have some intent around scheduling time. You could schedule time. You can say, hey, as a collective or as a team, let's go out and do this. So like, here's the date, here's what's going on. Let me make sure that people have time off to go and do this type of thing. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do and ways that you can approach it to influence people to volunteer more. But I think if you really want to make it a culture and you really want to make it something that sustains over time, you've got to lead by example. You've got to show people, how much you get out of, volunteering and do some of that social work. And then by doing that and by inspiring them and then by including them, I believe that then they want to do more because they get the same feeling and enjoyment out of helping others. Yeah, I think I know a lot of people who have done work like this and they're not very vocal about it. Mm-hmm. And it's because they're trying to remain humble. It's not, they don't want to seem like they only did it to get the credit for doing it. And so they don't, post the selfie with the homeless person at the soup kitchen. That'd be tacky, but they don't do anything in terms of notifying people what they're doing. And I don't know if that's necessarily the correct thing to do. You don't post the selfie with the homeless person, but you do. But there is nothing wrong with checking in on social media with what you're doing, or taking a picture of your hands in gloves serving soup, that kind of thing. If it really is who you are, there's nothing wrong with talking about it. You can do it in such a way where you remain humble and you still get the word out. Because again, if the goal is to get more people involved, they need to know about it. And so if you just keep it to yourself the whole time, then they're not going to know about it. Right. No, it is, there's a part of that. I mean, it's one of those things too, where sometimes you just want to do the right thing and you want to do the thing that you love to do and that you enjoy doing and supporting. And it can feel weird to maybe like talk about it in feeling like maybe you're bragging about it type of deal. But I think it's as a leader specifically, I feel like it's a responsibility to want to share those things and be proud of those things, because there is the potential that somebody will hear that and then feel inspired by that and then will also want to go out and add value somewhere. Right. It's worth it. It's okay to be tiny bit less than 100% humble if it means that whatever you're putting your heart into is going to now have more help from the people who saw it and became inspired by it. Right. Absolutely. All right. Another question here from Janelle Weaver. How did you guys build your skills in storytelling and being articulated? So I would imagine that's being more articulate is my guess. I don't know how to shut up. I've been building that skill since I was 1.5, I guess. Yeah. So a lot of it is honestly like building skills and storytelling in being articulate. It's mimicking.
It's osmosis. It is spending the time investing in yourself and your own self-development.
It's passion too. I'm putting myself in different situations and thinking about talking about other things. I'm not as articulate or skilled at storytelling if I'm talking about something that I don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to really enjoy what I'm doing to do it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I would. I think it's one of those things where practice. Well, I hate to say practice makes perfect, because I don't know that there's ever an element of being perfect. I think you can be really, really good at something, and you can be consistently improving in something, and maybe where you are with something is further along than other people. But I do believe in practice and in actual application. So if you want to get better at telling stories, tell more stories. If you want to get better at being articulate, stand in front of a team and practice presentation skills and have those conversations, and then ask for the feedback and ask for criticism, and do the things that will make you get better and better over time. Like that's kind of, that would be my advice to getting better at storytelling.
About 2 weeks ago, I listened to our first and second episodes of Hacking Your Leadership. And I cringed at my own self 20 times in the 20 minutes of each episode. Because so that shows that at the very least, practice does have something to do with it, because I think we've gotten better at doing this just because we do it several times a week. And the more you practice something, just the better you're going to get at doing it. But we also take feedback very seriously too. So when we had about 850 or so reviews on iTunes, they were all 5-star reviews. And it was like a badge of honor. I loved that. And then we got a 4-star review. We got one 4-star review, and I took it personally.
I remember.
And that 4-star review wasn't just a star click. They actually left a comment, and they said they really enjoy the content, but we say too much. And I actually reached out to her and I messaged her. And I said, no, but I thanked her. I said, thank you for the feedback. And from that point on, I became more cognizant of how many times I say when I'm talking. And so that has helped part of it. And I took Toastmasters last year for about a year, and that helped a little bit. So anytime you want to get better at something, it really is practice, and you have to do it more and more and more in different settings to get good at it. And even though we've been doing this for 7 months, when we did our first live episode 2 weeks ago, I was still really apprehensive about doing a live episode, because I thought, well, if something gets messed up when we're recording, we can just delete it out. And we've never had to do that, but knowing that we can makes it less likely to happen, I guess. It takes away that kind of that insecurity. But knowing it was going to be live and there was going to be no editing or post-production, that was a little intimidating. And so Lorenzo wanted to hype it up for days in advance. And I said, no, we're just going to go live and see how it goes. And so even after several months of doing it, I still wanted to make sure that we had some kind of practice doing this live before we started hyping it.
Well, and what's funny, obviously, I just threw out the comment from Roy. He says practice equals repetition, and repetition is the mother of all learning, right? And it's so true. And the funny full circle thing about this was that our getting to this point with Hacking Your Leadership Live and being on the platform that we're on was actually how we ended up meeting, Roy and April. That exact reason was I said, we want to do this. We don't know exactly how we want to do this, and let's go do some research. And ran into a platform and saw, a redheaded woman with a great smile on a camera, and said, like, watch this show and see what's going on here. Yeah. And that's and honestly, like, that's to tie into the previous question as well. The Net Friending show is about self-development, and it's about doing a lot of things that make you a better, not a better person, but evolve you and really help you dial in a lot of things, language and words that will allow you to be the best version of yourself. And it's been fantastic. And on top of all of that, it's allowed us to have some practice and repetition on doing live streaming, which neither one of us had ever done before. So it's been very, very cool and super helpful.
There's also another thing too to keep in mind, and that's that there's a book that I read a couple years ago called The Happiness Equation. by a Canadian author named Neil Pasricha. And it's a great book. And in it, he references the Nike slogan, "Just do it." And he talks about why that was so successful. And he says that human beings, we don't practice and then do it. We just do it. We do it in order to practice. So in our minds, we talk about preparation or getting prepared to do something, but the people who are truly successful at doing anything, they just do it and know that it's not going to be great. So forget about being great, just do it. And know that the second time you do it, it's going to be better than the first time. And the third time is going to be better than the second time. But there's not a lot of practice you can do on anything in life that doesn't involve actually doing the thing that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we have another comment question here. This has always been my secret. I'm curious on your thoughts on the correlation between leadership and marketing.
Between leadership and marketing. I mean, an element of leadership is marketing yourself. You have to be able to market yourself. And it's interesting because I think marketing, the concept of marketing is making a promise, right? You're telling somebody what they can expect out of a brand.
Yeah.
It's then up to another arm of your company to execute on that promise. And so marketing, a lot of times marketing people, they think what could be because they don't want to acknowledge the shortcomings of whatever their brand is. They want to talk about how this beautiful, amazing brand promise is going to impact the customers' lives amazingly. And then there becomes this kind of push and pull between the marketing arms of some organizations and the customer-facing arm where they say, wait a minute, you're going to make this promise to our customers. We can't execute on it. And then the marketing team says, why can't you execute on it? This is what we should be doing. And it's not as easy as just saying, why can't you? You have there's some messiness that goes into actually following through on it. But when it comes to leadership, it's kind of cool because there isn't that disconnect. You market yourself and you're the only one who has the ability to follow through on that promise or not. And so marketing from a leadership perspective, I think it becomes the ultimate in seeing whether or not you are who you say you are, or if you're not who you say you are. If you're an authentic leader, then what your people will see out of you is what you say they should see out of you. And sometimes there are leaders who are not great leaders, but they don't try to be someone they're not. And that actually makes them better leaders than someone who tries to make these promises to their people that everything's going to be great, and then it's not great. Because that you lose the inherent trust there. There are leaders that I can trust that they're going to be terrible people all the time, and I can change my behavior to know that that's a part of their life and that's a part of what our relationship is going to be like, and that is a more secure feeling than a leader who you just never know whether they're going to be up or down. Right.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think having consistency and having what's the word I'm looking for? Just knowing how somebody's going to show up, like
predictability.
Predictability. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Having predictability, like understanding how somebody's going to show up, allows for an environment where at least you kind of know what you're dealing with and know it's, going to happen the vast majority of the time. For a long time, we used to use this term of chameleon leadership. And that was a term of saying that there are a lot of leaders and people who will completely change their style, their approach to reflect whatever it is their direct leader does. And you didn't really know that's who they were until there was a leadership change. And all of a sudden now, they would approach it this way and say these words. They would be this directive versus that. Like you would say, wait a minute, I don't even know this person anymore. Like I thought I knew who they were. And that's just a horrible, I don't know where that came from. I imagine that came from
survival.
Exactly. Yeah.
When a new leader comes in, the assumption is they're going to bring their own people in. And so if the people that are already there are trying to survive, they're going to start to emulate that leader as much as they can, even if it means throwing out their own set of values. I'm not saying they all will. I'm saying that when you're talking about those people, that's what they're doing.
That's what happens, right? Yeah. And I remember having leaders where they would do that, and they would kind of, you know, survive for a little while, or but really good leaders would sniff right through that. And you know, and it wouldn't be long before that person was gone, or they got a really clear dose of accountability and or just conversation to, you know, to push back on them and question why they were doing that. Like it's something that I don't know. I've seen it less and less recently, honestly. Like probably, I don't know, over the last maybe last decade or so, I've seen it less, and I don't know if that's just because of the industry that I'm in, or, you know, the organizations that I've worked for. But it seems to be that more people are locked into their core values, and they're less likely to do that type of behavior. Have you seen that, or does that look different to you based on the work that you've done?
I think the reason I agree with you, but I will add a caveat to that, and that's that, you know, my business, I'm a consultant, and I choose who I get to work with. And part of the things when I'm taking on a new client, I'll meet with the leadership team before I take $1, and I'll spend a lot of time there. And there have been 2 times where I've said to a potential client, you know, this now's not the right time. And it was because they weren't the kind of people that I wanted to work with. And this doesn't come from a, you know, sense of values that, oh, I don't want to work for people who are like this. It comes from the fact that if they're looking for me to help them change something in their organization, and they're not willing to put in the work that is needed, then it's going to fail. Then they're going to blame me. Right. And I don't want to have a negative referral or reference from someone who says, yeah, that guy spent 3 months or 6 months with us and nothing changed. Yeah, nothing changed because you wanted things to change without you having to be a different leader. Right. And so there have been a couple times where I've declined that. So the people I work with, I think they fall into what you're saying, which is that, you know, they're values based, and that seems to be more and more valued a thing now than it was maybe 20 or 30 years ago. And I think that probably has to do a lot to do with leaders are starting to realize that employees who don't get that from their leaders are going to leave. And so they have to be able to show up that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I want to stop and say hi to Cheryl real quick. Cheryl popped on the show and she says, hi, Chris and Lorenzo.
Hi, Cheryl.
And Janelle actually responded here. We might get a face cover comment. There you go. You have a little comment mustache. She says, thanks y'all for answering my question. Love listening to your podcast each week as it helps support my growth in how I engage and communicate with my team as a leader. I think she meant definitely, not defiantly. I definitely need to ask for more feedback. Can do.
Good. Feedback is great.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Cheryl, thank you for joining. If you have any questions at all, by all means, feel free to pop in and ask a question. And we'll be answering questions here till about 9:30 tonight. Roy and April,
9:30 your time.
9:30 my time. I'm sorry. 6:30 your time, right? Yeah. Roy and April, thank you so much. Janelle says, LOL. I think she did mean definitely, not defiantly. Yes. I'll defiantly ask for more feedback. I need to ask for more feedback.
Very commonly misspelled word.
Absolutely. Right. Yes. Absolutely. Let's see here. Wally also said charisma goes a long way as well. In regards to his question earlier, I missed that comment there in talking about characters from literature and modern leadership, and in today's society, the epitome of a leader. He says that charisma is also something that goes a long way.
I agree with that, but I can think of a leader specifically that I won't name that I've had in the past where their charisma was about as good as it got. And to anybody that didn't report directly to them, so 1 or 2 levels below, I've never seen somebody more hoisted up and idolized and raved about, but they were not a good leader to their direct reports. Mm-hmm. They had the same charisma to everybody, but the direct reports got the other side of them too. So yes, I agree. Charisma is fantastic, but you definitely need to, it just gets your foot in the door. You still need to be able to follow through on that good feeling you bring and that you exude, that needs to come through in actions too.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you a question. We have a handful of episodes that I know we have analytics on in the podcast where they are extremely popular episodes, and we're going back on them. We kind of know like why, and it, you know what I mean. And many of them being being around, things like compensation conversations and why those so difficult, why the leaders not want to have them, and things like that. But one of the ones that surprised me a little bit was around kind of like the idea of how come some leaders, because we had a episode about it, that we had another kind of follow-up, similar question, where it's about leaders being disconnected from the tactics of the work. Like when you are, like the conversation becomes, well, my boss just doesn't understand because they don't do this job. And the context was like multi-unit managers and leaders that don't spend the day-to-day doing the actual job, and this disconnect between the leader of a team, a department, or a store, and then their leader who maybe has multiple teams, multiple departments, multiple stores, right? So I wanted to ask you about this because I had a couple of questions pop up over the last couple of weeks about getting into this discussion a little bit deeper. Do you feel the question was like, informing sounds good, but is there a way that you can help develop and by managing up your direct leader? Is it like people were asking, like, should I have them come in and like if they could just spend a day doing the job? Like, is that something that you would recommend to ask that leader to come do?
No, I mean, you can, but it's unlikely they will.
Okay.
If they are probably, and first of all, you actually don't want your boss doing your job. You don't want them coming in and doing your job. But there's nothing wrong with asking how they would do it. Because if you're truly at a loss on how to do something and you're explaining the situation, you feel like they just don't understand because they're too removed from it, then if you ask them how they would do it, then that's what a leader's one of the per jobs of a leader is to make sure that you're giving counsel and advice if it's solicited, for sure.
Sure.
And at the very least, it might just be even if you're hearing the advice and it sounds to you like this is not going to work, doesn't matter. Do it. To the T. Do exactly what they said. And there's no better way to get somebody to really take notice of a problem that you think they don't have visibility to than to make it so you've eliminated all the potential other variables that they could dismiss the problem as. And the only way to do that is to ask them how they would do it. You're struggling with something. How would you do it? I'd love some advice. And then take that advice and run with it and do exactly as they say.
Cool. No, I just want to check my answer. Yeah. Very similar advice, right? You anytime that you have to have your boss come and do your job for whatever the reason is, whether it's by force, by request, or anything, like that's not a good move.
No.
Your best bet is to ask them for help and support, and then take whatever it is that they give you and then go apply that. And that way you'll, at minimum, even if you don't get the lift in the results or you don't get the change in the culture or whatever that is, at minimum you build a relationship with your direct boss to show them that you're willing to take feedback, you're willing to commit to a strategy, you're willing to listen, and you're willing to do these things with your team. And many times that will then create a relationship where there's a lot more collaboration.
You know what I kind of view it as? You know how when you lose your internet connection or your cable and you call the customer service number and they go through, like, there's this list that they have written down that they have to go through with every customer. Okay, I need you to unplug it and plug it back in again. Now I need you to push this button and in your mind, you're thinking, I've done all of this already. I know what the problem is. I know this isn't going to work. And you just kind of have to grin and bear it and go through the motions, because the only way you're going to get to the level 2 tech, which is the one who actually gets to solve your problem or send somebody out to your house or whatever, is to go through the motions with that person who has to do their job. And the reason why they're doing that job is because of the 1,000 phone calls they get a day, 950 of them do get solved by those things.
Right.
And if you happen to be one of those other people where it's not going to solve your problem, just understand you have to go through the motions, and it might take a little bit of time to have that happen. But when you emerge out the other side and the problem gets solved, you will have strengthened the relationship between you and your boss in the process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so real. Like,
Yeah.
It's such a real analogy. All right, Roy has a question. What do you both wish you had known before taking your first leadership role?
How to lead people.
Right. Yeah.
I've been very transparent with this before in one of our episodes last year, that when I got promoted to lead people for the first time, I almost got fired 6 months, 6 months later. Yeah. And I didn't know how to lead them. I knew how to do their job well. And because I knew how to do the job well, it was naturally assumed that, hey, I must be able to lead a team of 15 people who are doing this job. And they are very different skills. I mean, there's a reason why Phil Jackson wasn't on the court. He was on the sidelines. It's different skill sets. And I thought I was pumped and ready to go. And I thought, yeah, more money, more responsibility. Let me at it. And it was very humbling, and I almost lost my job.
What do you think was the number one thing that may have caused that to happen? Like besides like
empathy.
Just kind of was it empathy?
Empathy. Yeah. I led people how I wanted to be led. There was that golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, right? Well, that was replaced by the platinum rule many years ago, which is treat people the way they want to be treated. And when you're a leader, that rings true even more so when you're a leader. So I was treating people the way I wanted to be treated, and they didn't want to be treated that way. And so I thought I was gaining their support, but I was losing it. Right.
Roy says hard skills versus soft skills.
Yes, I had no problem with hard skills. It's soft skills that I had to work on.
Yeah, I would tell you.
You're just the opposite.
Well, exactly. No, 100%.
To learn the hard skills. Yeah,
and I've shared the example on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
Right. For me, it was it was the connection that people actually really want, love, and respect accountability. And I just went into the roles thinking that people were great. They wanted to do good work, and that they will work as hard as I will if I can make them happy, and if I can create an environment and culture that is, super fun and engaging. Like that was my approach to it. If I can just, they were
gonna love you all the way to that ship sinking to the bottom of the ocean.
Which was the story I told, right? Which is directly from my district sales manager, one of my biggest mentors, Victoria, right? And she was just blatantly honest with me about it. And that's what I needed. And that's what I needed to hear. And then the great thing about it, though, was that she then showed me how to leverage the things that I do really well to fix that and to solve that part of what was in my brain, to get more information and make a new decision, and to do those types of things. And that's exactly what ended up happening was, I led so much, with the soft skills that I needed to understand that that when you actually hold people accountable, you show them that there's value in doing things the right way. And you show them that you care enough about them you care enough about them to recognize them when they do their best, and to also be direct with them when they decide not to show up that way.
Right. The old saying, the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you are still at the point where you want to coach somebody and sit them down, you haven't written them off. That's the whole point.
Right.
But
exactly.
The only way they're going to interpret it that way is if your daily actions to them show them that you are in it for them, that you're there to support them all the time, that it's not just, I'm going to leave you alone until you do something wrong, and then I'm going to hold you accountable. That doesn't work.
Right. No, absolutely. Another question. So Frank asks, how do you think leadership has changed since you started back in the day and present day, and what has remained the same? And then he said, by the way, it's me misspelling Janelle's word she is cooking. So he's taking ownership.
No. she let her off the hook for defiantly. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. She's like,
what a big man that is.
I'm going to defiantly make your dinner right now, is what she's saying.
He was about to not get dinner. Yeah.
Exactly. So leadership changed since we started in present day, and what has remained the same? I like this question because we've answered the
A lot.
first part before a lot, but we have not talked about what has remained the same, at least on the podcast.
So I think there are two big differences that have two big things I want to talk about when it comes to what has changed with leadership. And I'll make the story brief because just for the sake of time. When I was 16 years old, my first job was bagging groceries for a grocery store. And I wanted to request time off to go on a family vacation that we did every year in August. We went houseboating. And I remember that I had to fill out a time off request and give it to my direct manager, who all their job was to do was to look and make sure that no one else had requested off the same time, so they weren't short too many people, and then just say yes or no. And then I had to actually interview with the general manager of the grocery store to get the time off. So my direct manager, and this was, the vacation was 8 months away, so I wasn't worried about other people already having the time off. And so I got my time off request, and I had to make an appointment with the general manager based on my schedule. And so it was like a week away. And I remember walking into the office being nervous. Like I shaved that day and made sure that my uniform was pressed.
Right.
And I gave the time off request to him. And I remember him kind of leaning back in his chair, and he tried to make it look like his job was more important than it really was. He'd look at the paper and he'd kind of think about it. Like, so what are you going to be doing? I'm going on vacation. I'm going houseboating with my family. Okay. You done this before? Yeah, absolutely. Every year we've done it before, and I got it approved. I got it off.
Yeah.
And to me, that was just life. I was 16 years old. That's just what you did. And I moved on. By the way, 1995 is when this was. Yeah. And so I moved on with my life. And then the first time that I was an assistant manager for Best Buy, opening up a brand new store, there was an employee that approached me to request time off, and I had never met them before except for during the hiring process. They meet everybody. And so I'd had maybe 10 words with this person. And now the store had been open for like 2 days, brand new. I never spent any time with them one-on-one really. And they brought me a time off request. And I knew that it was far enough out in advance where I was going to approve it anyway. But I wanted to get to know the person, make small talk, little chit chat. So as I'm signing the approval for the time off, I said, where are you going? And they very, very quickly, without missing a beat, said, does it matter? And I was completely taken aback. And I said, no, not at all. I just trying to get to know who you are. And they were like, oh, okay. I just want to make sure that where I was going had nothing to do with whether or not I got it approved. I said, no, not at all. I just signed it. You're good. Yeah. And I hearkened back in my brain to that interview with my GM when I was 16 years old, thinking, if I had said that in that interview, I would have lost my job. Like I would have just been gone. And so a lot of what has changed has been kind of speared by this concept that a lot of workers right now have this inherent belief inside them that this job needs me more than I need it. Mm-hmm. And it's not wrong. They're right. The job does need them more than they need it, because in a strong job market, a person with skills can go anywhere they want to. Mm-hmm. And you mix that with the transparency of the internet, the Glassdoors of the world and LinkedIn's. And it's very easy now to see whether or not the grass is green on the other side. People talk, and you can figure out if your job is good, if your pay is in line with what other people are making, if your job responsibilities are what you want them to be. You can very easily kind of, figure out where you want to go if it's not where you are. And so that didn't used to be the case. You had to it was a big leap of faith to leave a job before, and now it's not. And so you get that combined with the mindset shift, and that has led to a lot of changes on how leaders get to lead. They don't get to lead with the authority of their title anymore. That doesn't get them anything besides how they're accountable for their own job responsibilities. It doesn't mean that anybody's going to follow them. And so I think that's the biggest difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's the difference with leaders who are constantly evolving and looking to work in service of their people, because the people have changed. The culture has changed. This generation has changed, and the internet's a big part of that. So the fact that there's so much accessibility to knowledge and information and connection, and that's kind of the idea of social leadership, is just as the culture is evolving and adjusting and changing. If you're if you're a good leader, you're going to meet people where they're at. You're going to, to change and evolve as well, to be able to provide them with the, the insight, the leadership, the perspective, the directions, the guidelines, whatever they are, to be able to help support people at that point, to give them the best opportunity to be the best version of themselves and to achieve their personal professional goals. So, that to me is the, what has changed, and I think is remaining the same. Good leadership is good leadership. There were people before us, and probably, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, that led with a great amount of understanding and empathy and connection, and they listened, and they adjusted their style to meet the person for how they learn. So like those things, in the people business, those things will always be helpful and appreciated. And so, that's what I say remain the same. Is there are leaders today that I work with and have worked for that remind me verbatim of great leaders and mentors that I worked with 10, 15, 20 years ago, because those core competencies, those core values, those core skills, and just a person being a great person who wants to help others and work in service of others, they will always be great leaders, and those things will always show up in a way that teams love them, people appreciate them, people trust them, and people, aspire to be like them.
Right. I've always believed that what people are looking for out of their job hasn't changed much in 50 years. What has changed is the recourse they have when they're not getting it. Sure. So a leader, 30, 40 years ago, if they didn't have the soft skills, it doesn't mean their people weren't looking for the soft skills. It just means that they weren't going to quit in the lack of the soft skills, because it was that leap of faith to leave and go somewhere else. But the people back then still would have responded really well to an empathetic leader who had their best interests in mind, who set them up to succeed with relationships with their coworkers, people who they actually cared about, connecting them with the mission of the organization. If you were able to do that back then, it's not like people left you. It's not like people looking for different things now. It's just that nowadays they're going to leave if they don't get it. And before, if a leader didn't have those skills, they were less likely to be punished for not having those skills because the people stuck around.
Right. Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end.
Wow, that was fast.
Of another episode of Hacking Your Leadership Live. So yeah, man, it's crazy how fast these things go, right? We get in the mode and we start answering questions. So I want to thank everybody who popped on the show tonight. Roy, Frank, Roy, Frank, Janelle, Cheryl, April, obviously. And April, we can't wait to have you back and drive safe, and you're definitely in our thoughts and everything. Let me see here. Danielle and Walter, aka Wally, and Vic and Hector. Thank you guys all for popping on tonight and kind of enjoying the show. We really, really appreciate it. Derek Palmer, what's up, brother?
The Derek Palmer?
The Derek Palmer. Good to see you both of you partnering to help create a culture of leadership that enables others to achieve beyond what they thought they were capable of.
Wow.
The Derek
maybe we should link to your military homecoming video that you made 18 years or 13 years ago at the end of the video.
That would be a different Derek, but yes.
You said Derek.
Yeah, Derek Fender is who you're thinking of.
Yeah, but wasn't Derek Palmer his boss at the store?
Yeah, Derek Palmer was the manager. He was my boss.
Right, that's what I said. Yeah, I thought he was still in the video.
Yeah. Well, so here's the funny part. So full circle, since we got a couple more minutes. So Derek Palmer is the reason why I know Derek Fender.
Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't even remember Derek. I didn't remember his name. The military person who came home. I just remember Derek Palmer. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Derek Palmer, what's up, brother? Speaking of great leaders and great mentors and people that did some really, really great work. Absolutely, man. I'm glad you were able to make the show tonight and check it out, dude. Yes, and we are comedy. We are a comedy duo called Which Derek is Which. Well, obviously Chris was right. I just was I was I was wrong in that one. But
no worries.
Yeah, but thanks, man. Hey, you guys, thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We're going to keep doing this, and we're going to figure out what nights work the best, and maybe we'll even pop around a couple different nights, see how it goes, and see what happens.
I think that's the best bet, is to kind of test it in different times. As long as we hype it up in advance for a few days and make sure that people know about it, what will come to the surface is a day that tends to work best, and we'll figure that out.
Absolutely, you guys. All right, thanks, man. You guys enjoy the rest of the evening. Have a great week, and listen for the new episode on Monday.
Yes. Thank you all.
Peace. Have a great night. Bye. The Life of Lozo podcast is brought to you by Stay Tuned Studios, SDS Podcast, The Taylor Shop Inc., 03 Productions, The Beat Brigade, Rhyme Designs Clothing, Ronsworth Guitars, The Music Experience, Custom Shirts and More, Local Goods Market, The Art of Kyle Willis, The Josh Saman MMA Foundation, and of course, Jack's Nutrition. Thank you guys for listening to this two-part series. If you haven't had a chance yet, check out visionclaritysupport.com for more info on my leadership book, A Leadership Crash Course on the 3 Pillars of Success by me, Lorenzo Flores. Thanks y'all for the support. I appreciate y'all. Have a great week. Talk to you soon. Peace.